I've never been the kind of person to get invited to parties, especially not the exclusive kind. So when Sam approached me in the middle of campus and said, "You're coming to my party this weekend, right?" I thought he must have been joking or mistaken. Sam was one of those people. Confident, effortlessly charming, and somehow friends with everyone. Me? I stammered, glancing behind me to make sure he wasn't talking to someone else. "Of course, it wouldn't be the same without you," he said with a grin that made me feel like I was being pulled into some kind of spotlight. I didn't even know Sam well. We'd worked on a group project once, but he was the type of guy who made a room feel smaller, and I usually stayed on the edges, unnoticed. Still, there he was, inviting me, to what he called the party of the year. "It's at my uncle's mansion, a few miles out of town," Sam continued. "Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Everyone will be there." He handed me a card with an address scrawled in bold, elegant lettering. I hesitated. Crowds weren't my thing, and the thought of walking into a house full of strangers sent a ripple of anxiety through me. "I'm not sure." "No excuses," Sam interrupted, his voice dropping to a playful but firm tone. "It's a once-in-a-lifetime thing. You'll regret it if you don't come." For a moment I considered declining, but then I looked at Sam, his easy confidence like a magnet, and I thought about my life. Same routine every day, same lonely weekends. Maybe this was what I needed to shake things up, to stop being invisible. "All right," I said, surprising myself. "I'll be there." Sam's grin widened, and he clapped me on the shoulder. "Good choice. It starts at 9. Don't be late." As he walked away, I stared at the card in my hand. The address looked simple enough, but something about the thick, ornate paper felt off. I pushed the thought aside. This was my chance to step out of my comfort zone, and I wasn't going to back out now. Still, as the weekend crept closer, an uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. I ignored it. What was the worst that could happen? When I pulled up to the mansion, I almost turned around. It wasn't just big, it was immense. The kind of house that belonged in a historical documentary or a ghost story, with towering spires and dark windows that seemed to watch me as I parked. The air was heavy, the night unusually quiet except for the faint rustling of the trees lining the driveway. The front door was ajar, and warm light spilled out, inviting but strangely dim. I stepped inside, clutching the invitation Sam had given me like it was a lifeline. The entryway was massive, with a grand staircase spiraling upward and chandeliers that shimmered with a dull golden glow. But something about the house felt wrong. The decor was old, too old. Dark wood paneling, tapestries with faded images of hunts and battles, and strange, antique statues that seemed to follow me with their eyes. I couldn't put my finger on it, but everything seemed deliberately placed to make you feel small. I joined the crowd milling in the main hall, and immediately, I felt out of place. Everyone looked perfect. Not just well-dressed, but unnaturally so. Gowns and suits that looked like they were tailored for royalty, skin without a blemish, and smiles so polished they seemed fake. When they looked at me, it was like they saw through me, their eyes lingering just a little too long before they turned away. I tried to blend in, hovering near a table laden with food. It was an extravagant spread, caviar, exotic fruits, pastries that looked like they belonged in a museum. But no one seemed to touch it. Plates remained pristine, glasses of champagne raised but never sipped. The room hummed with low voices, but the conversations were strange. No laughter, no excitement, just murmurs, like the guests were reciting lines from a script. I strained to hear, but the words blurred together, meaningless. And then there were the silences. Every so often, the room would dip into a chilling quiet, like everyone had stopped breathing at the same time. I checked my phone to distract myself, but I noticed something odd. No one else had theirs out. In fact, I hadn't seen a single person with a phone. It was like technology didn't belong here, swallowed by the oppressive atmosphere. "Enjoying yourself?" I nearly jumped out of my skin. Sam had appeared beside me, his grin as wide as ever. But up close, even his smile looked strange, like it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah," This place is something else, I said, trying to sound casual. It's only just beginning, he said, his voice almost too cheerful. Stick around, you'll see. And then he was gone, swallowed by the crowd as quickly as he'd appeared. I stood there, gripping my glass, trying to shake the growing unease that was wrapping itself around me like a second skin. Whatever this party was, it wasn't normal, and I was starting to think I shouldn't have come. The room fell silent when the host stepped forward. I hadn't noticed him before, which was strange. He was the kind of man you couldn't ignore. Tall, imposing, and dressed in a tailored black suit that seemed to absorb the dim light. His smile was as unnerving as everything else in this house. Too wide, too calculated. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, his voice smooth but cold. Thank you for joining us tonight. As you may have heard, this is no ordinary gathering. Tonight we have a game for you. A scavenger hunt, if you will. A murmur rippled through the crowd, some guests whispering in hushed tones, others smiling like they'd been expecting this. I stayed silent, my gut twisting in knots. The rules are simple, the host continued. Scattered throughout this mansion are items, objects that hold a certain significance. Your job is to find them. And remember, his eyes seemed to pierce through me. No one leaves until the game is complete. The room buzzed with false excitement. A few guests clapped. I wanted to run, but the weight of his words, "No one leaves," kept me rooted in place. Reluctantly, I joined the others as we were handed small, ornate cards with vague clues written in looping script. Mine read, "What you've lost but cannot replace waits where shadows embrace." I didn't know what it meant, but as the crowd began to disperse, I followed, wandering down a dimly lit hallway that seemed to stretch endlessly. The mansion felt different now, the air heavier, the walls closer. Every creak of the floorboards made my pulse quicken. I turned into a room that looked like a study, bookshelves lining the walls and a grand desk in the center. First, it seemed empty, but then I saw it. A small, worn notebook sitting on the desk. My breath caught. It was my notebook, the one I'd kept in high school, filled with my most private thoughts. I knew it was impossible. I hadn't seen it in years and I'd lost it when I moved. But there it was, unmistakably mine, down to the faded doodles on the cover. I picked it up with trembling hands, flipping through pages that confirmed it. Every word was mine, but the final entry wasn't. It was written in a different hand. "You'll never find the rest." I stumbled back, nearly dropping the notebook, but a faint sound from the hallway froze me in place. It was a laugh or maybe a scream. I ran back out, clutching the notebook, and almost collided with another guest. "Did you hear that?" I asked. They didn't answer. Their face was pale, eyes wide, like they'd seen something they couldn't explain. Without a word, they turned and disappeared down another corridor. As the night dragged on, I noticed fewer and fewer people. The crowd thinned, their absence barely acknowledged. Doors slammed behind some guests, and they didn't come back. My card burned in my hand, the clue haunting me. Whatever this game was, it wasn't for fun. It was a trap, and we were the prey. I don't know how long I'd been wandering the halls when I found the hidden door. The air had grown colder, the laughter and whispers from the other guests fading into an eerie silence. I'd been searching for anything that could make sense of this nightmare when I noticed a section of the wall that didn't match the rest. The wood was newer, almost out of place. My hands trembled as I pressed against it. With a soft click, the panel swung open, revealing a dark staircase leading downward. Every instinct screamed at me to turn back, but curiosity, or maybe desperation, pushed me forward. The stairs creaked under my weight, each step echoing in the suffocating darkness. When I reached the bottom, the smell hit me first. A nauseating mix of mildew and something metallic, like rust or blood. I gagged but pressed on, my phone flashlight trembling in my hand. The room at the end of the staircase was a nightmare come to life. Masks made of stretched, tan skin hung on the walls, their hollow eyes staring back at me. Beneath them were shelves lined with jars, each containing small, grotesque items. Teeth, locks of hair, fingers. In the center of the room, There was a table covered in photographs. My stomach turned as I shuffled through them. They were pictures of guests smiling, dancing, drinking, at parties just like this one. But as I flipped through, the images grew darker. The same faces, but now they were pale, lifeless, posed like dolls. Some were even wearing the skin masks from the walls. And then I saw my face. A photograph of me, taken earlier that night as I stood awkwardly near the untouched food. I dropped it, my breathing shallow, my heart pounding so loud it felt like it might burst. On the far wall, a dusty shelf held rows of videotapes. Each was labeled with a date and a name. I grabbed one at random and found an old, boxy TV in the corner. My hands shook as I slid the tape in and hit play. The screen flickered to life, showing a party just like the one upstairs. The guests were lively, laughing and talking, but as the tape went on, the laughter turned to screams. The video cut to what I can only describe as a hunt. Terrified people running through the mansion, being chased by figures wearing those horrible masks. I yanked the tape out, stumbling back as my flashlight beam landed on a figure standing in the doorway. It was the host. "You found the collection," he said, his voice smooth, almost amused. What is this?" I stammered, my voice barely audible. He stepped closer, his shadow looming. "We're preserving perfection. Everyone here has a place in our little family. The best of them join us. The rest," he gestured toward the masks. "Well, they're remembered another way." I backed up, bumping into the table. I don't belong here," I said, panic rising. "Oh, but you do," he replied, his smile widening. "We've been watching you for some time. You're the final piece we need tonight." I turned and bolted up the stairs before he could say another word. His laughter echoed behind me, cold and cruel, as I fled blindly through the mansion. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. My breath came in ragged gasps as I ran through the mansion, the hallways twisting and turning like a maze designed to trap me. Every door I tried was locked, and every corner seemed to echo with faint footsteps. Sometimes behind me, sometimes ahead. It was like the house itself was alive, conspiring to keep me inside. I clutched the flashlight tightly, its beam flickering with every frantic step. I couldn't shake the host's words. "You're the final piece we need." What did that even mean? I didn't want to know. All I knew was that I had to get out. I stumbled into a grand ballroom, empty now except for the faint hum of unseen energy. The chandeliers above swayed slightly, as if moved by a breeze that didn't exist. My eyes darted to the far end of the room, where I spotted a set of double doors slightly ajar. Hope surged through me and I sprinted toward them. Then I heard it. A low, guttural laugh, followed by the slow, deliberate sound of footsteps. Turning, I saw them, the guests. But they weren't just guests anymore. Their smiles were gone, replaced by blank expressions. They moved as one, their polished elegance now robotic and wrong, as if strings were pulling them forward. And leading them was the host, his eyes gleaming with something primal and hungry. "There's nowhere to run," he called out, his voice almost playful. Panic took over. I shoved the double doors open and found myself in a narrow hallway, lit only by the flickering glow of old sconces. I ran blindly, ignoring the pain in my legs and the burn in my lungs, until I saw it. A window at the end of the hall. I didn't think. I hurled myself toward it, crashing through the glass and landing hard on the ground outside. Pain shot through my arm, but I scrambled to my feet, adrenaline drowning out everything else. The mansion loomed behind me, its dark windows like eyes, watching as I stumbled into the woods surrounding the estate. Branches clawed at my skin, the ground uneven beneath my feet, but I kept running, afraid to look back. The sounds of pursuit faded as I pushed deeper into the forest, but I didn't stop, couldn't stop. Eventually, I collapsed against a tree, my body trembling, tears streaming down my face. I didn't know how far I'd run or if I was safe. All I could think about were those photographs, those masks, those screams on the tape. I never saw the mansion again. I don't even know if it still exists. When I told the police, they found nothing at the address Sam gave me. Just an overgrown lot, and a crumbled foundation that hadn't been touched in decades. Sometimes I think I escaped. Other times I wonder if I'm still there, if this is just another layer of the game. Every shadow feels like a watcher, every stranger's smile too wide, too polished. I tell myself it's over, but deep down, I know the truth. Some doors, once opened, never really close.